Welcome to the Power of Nature podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Waldo. In this show, I talk about how nature and the natural world can communicate with us, how it can communicate directly and individually with each of us, and how this can create immeasurable benefits for us in our lives. I share stories of my experiences doing this as part of a regular and ongoing practice, and I talk to others about their experiences with the power of nature as well. So join me as we go on a journey of learning about the power of nature, how it can communicate directly with us, and the impact that it can have on our own lives. Welcome back to the Power of Nature podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to be sharing a story of, really an experience today that reminded me about what I've learned and what I've come to understand that I'd like to share about how nature can start communicating with us, or more like how we can start receiving communication from nature if we're not quite sure how to do that. In this podcast, I've shared, story after story and experience after experience on all different types of subjects, animals and the weather and all different, aspects of nature in the natural world, and how nature in the natural world has been communicating with me. The kind of like the insights I've gotten, the teachings that I've received in a way, they feel like teachings. It feels almost like nature is giving me information that is, really valuable and relevant to things that I have going on in my life. And this has been happening to me for all my life, for sure. I believe that it, really started when I was, a little girl as far as my own awareness. But I've really come to understand more over the last, 20 years about how to start understanding what nature is communicating, understanding that nature can communicate with me, what's really going on, and how to open up to this, how to open up to allow it and receive it and experience it and get it. And that's what I want to talk about today. So let's dive into this. So today has been not the easiest day here in my life. Obviously, well, not obviously, but it's actually a beautiful day here in Montana. We've got some blue skies, we've got some clouds, but there's the sun is out. It's cold, but not too cold. There's a lot of blessings that are happening in the world. And I know I have so many blessings. Actually, one of my blessings, if you're hearing any noise in the background, is Art Cat, aka Kit Kat. She lives in my office in my studio, and sometimes when I podcast, especially when kind of like I feel a lot of strong emotion or energy, she will start running around. So if you hear what sounds like a tornado through it, I don't know if my mic's going to pick it up, but if you hear what sounds like a tornado around me, that is just my little half feral cat that lives in my office that does this sometimes when I record. But as I was saying, I have a lot of blessings, and I know that I have so many blessings. I am sitting in my office and I'm looking out the window at this amazing mountain that, before we moved to this property, I couldn't even imagine living in a place where I would have a constant view of a mountain. I have these amazing trees around me, these trees that just They're actually on the cover of the Power of Nature podcast that sometimes I use, art from other people for my various things. But that photograph is a photograph from our property. I took it. It's trees on our property, really, and that's what's on the cover. And and those trees look different depending upon the weather. But I'm sitting here in my office and I'm looking at these trees and I'm looking at this mountain, and I have a lot of blessings, and I have this amazing, I have amazing nature around me. As a matter of fact, as I was recording, 4 deer just walked along our property right in front of me. I mean, I've wanted this, and I didn't even know how it could happen, and yet that's what I have in my property. People around here think deer are no big deal, but when I lived in a more urban area, the idea of just having deer walk through your property seemed to me like something that would just be like out of a fairy tale. And in a way it is. I'm sitting here and I'm recording, and suddenly I see something moving in the woods, and then I realize it's a deer butt. It's like their little white behind kind of sticks out from the forage around them. And then I see, there's 3 or 4 of them. But I hadn't planned to record today. And there is a reason I decided to record in it. It's not about deer. It's about something that I saw that is less common than deer. I love our deer, but I do see deer a lot. What I saw today on our property is turkeys. Wild turkeys. Now, there are wild turkeys around, when I go drive my kids to school or whatever, there's a whole crew of them that often cross the road. But I've not had that many experiences with seeing wild turkeys on our property. And the closest that we've had was, I think it was like 2 years ago, we had 1 turkey that crossed our horse pasture. And I remember kind of making a big deal out of it. Well, today's been a kind of a tough day. There's a lot going on. Some things with my kids that were going on, some other stressful things going on with my family and family dynamics and all that kind of stuff. And I was just kind of feeling it. And I was kind of feeling, just a little like bamboozled is, I guess, the best way I would describe it. Like, what do I even do? Where do I even turn? Like, what do I even do next? It's just almost seems like every time I go to do something, some other kind of drama or situation would kind of present itself. And for some reason, I went into my room and I looked out the window for some reason, because I could see out the window. I wasn't even trying to look out. I just saw something moving outside. And I look outside and I see a turkey. Not just 1 turkey, but 3 turkeys right outside my window, probably 15 feet from where I was. maybe 20. I'm not good at measuring distance, but not very far. And they're just kind of wandering around. And suddenly, when that happened, it's hard to put to words, but I'm going to try. So remember, I said, this has been a stressful day, a stressful morning, and now into the day. And that's what I was feeling. That's like the emotional state I was in. It was like there would be one thing and then another thing and another thing. It's like kind of couldn't get a break. That's the way I was feeling. When I saw these turkeys just, out of the blue in a way, because I think I walked into my room to maybe get some socks on, and then I saw something out the window. When I saw the turkeys, it's like I felt a sense of relief, a sense of potential, a sense of respite. It's almost like I kind of was, it's like all the stress that I had been feeling and the tenseness in my body that I think that I was experiencing that I wasn't really aware of, but I know was there. It's almost like it just kind of eased with the presence or the acknowledgement of these turkeys. You know, it hit me at a visceral level. It wasn't like in my mind, like your stress is now gone. It was literally like a feeling experience. Like suddenly, almost like, have you ever had a situation happen where you're focused on something, and it's almost like somebody like snaps and you kind of come to? It was like that. It was almost like the turkeys snapped and made me come to a different level of awareness of my situation and my life and my experiences. And it came from seeing the turkeys. Well, how did that work? Well, when I saw the turkeys, first of all, the idea that there are these, wild creatures that just are wandering literally through our yard, to me is such an amazing thing that I before living here, I dreamed of, and I wanted it so much. So I love having wildlife on our property. Just love it. And then the sight of these turkeys, it's so kind of weird. It was like, one, they weren't afraid. Like I walked kind of up to the window and the window's closed, but wild animals, they always know when we're in the house. They have that kind of sense. The turkey just kind of turned around and kind of looked at me. The other two were kind of busy doing their own turkey thing, but the one just kind of turned around and looked at me, unfazed, almost like, I don't know, just like, it's hard to put to words. I feel a well of emotion because I realize that it's like the turkey reassured me. It's like the presence of the turkey was snapping me out of what I was feeling and bringing me to a different perspective that was more my true perspective, more my truth of who I am and what I am, so many times when we are stressed out or we have fear or doubt or uncertainty or things just seem to be not going well, what I've learned over and over again is that there's some way in which, we're taking on some kind of untruth or situation that we don't know how to navigate, and it can feel, it can feel awful. But what I've learned and discovered is as I tune more into my inner self, I've started to realize that my inner self is my truth and is always loved and loving and fine and okay. And it's all this other stuff that is not the truth, but you can get caught up in it. I certainly get caught up in it, get caught up in kind of almost like on a jag of not feeling good and feeling uncertainty and fear and whatever. And then it can kind of escalate. And the moment with the turkey was kind of like, the turkey kind of being there, just kind of almost like felt like someone snapped their fingers and woke me up to the falseness of what I was experiencing, which is that things are hard, things are stressful, things are not working out, things are, no matter what you do, things are difficult, you have one situation and it kind of goes to the crapper, and then you kind of try to get through it, and then some other thing happens and some other thing happens. Have you ever had a day like that where it just seems like you can't kind of win? Well, that's in a way kind of how I was feeling. I mean, these weren't huge things, but they were enough to be affecting me. And when I saw the turkey, it was almost like the turkey's presence was like a snapping that woke me out of the BS of what I was feeling to the truth of all of the, to the truth of being actually okay, to the truth of actually being in a state of peace. And it made me feel really different. And part of it, with it being a turkey, is that, so like years ago when I was just starting to kind of more formally trying to understand how my own inner self and how elements from the natural world, like I tried to kind of understand my intuition and how that all works. I studied shamanism. But even before that, even before I studied shamanism, because shamanism, I was really always drawn to nature. So that's kind of why shamanism called me, because of the strong connection with nature. But even before that, I had started to kind of play around with like these animal cards. There's this thing. It's kind of like a play on the tarot, but it's like these little animal cards, and each animal, kind of like has a little description of what the animal means, and you could kind of draw a set of cards and kind of try to understand like what is being communicated to you. And I did this many, many years ago, probably 2000, 1999, somewhere around there. So more than 25 years ago, I would say, and with that kind of stuff can come a definition of like, here's what turkeys mean, or here's what, if you draw a card with a turkey on it, this is what it means. Or if you draw a crow, this is what it means. What I have come to understand is that sometimes those can be helpful to get you started. But what I've come to understand is that when nature communicates with us, or anything communicates with us, it's using a language of what in our experience something has meant. So like if I saw an image of a yellow duck, it's not about looking a rubber ducky. It's not about looking up on the internet, what does a rubber ducky mean? Because I could have a very different experience with rubber duckies than someone else. What it is what are my associations with it? And so this is something that, I have learned and I've taught people about as well, in terms of understanding how our communication with ourselves and our inner self and even nature can happen, how to facilitate that and how to understand it. Is that like, what is the thing that's communicating? What does that mean to us? What is our personal association? Well, for me, I grew up in the United States, in a very traditional kind of cultural tradition where on Thanksgiving people have turkey. I'm not a vegan. I'm not a vegetarian. I've had periods of doing that. I'm not a big fan of, I don't know. I have some kind of issues about that with myself, some of my own quarrels, because I love animals and yet I also am not a vegetarian or a vegan. But to me, I have cultural, personal associations with Thanksgiving being about turkeys, and Thanksgiving being about this idea of giving thanks. blessings, right? Like what's a Thanksgiving dinner is the idea of having, my mom used to like do 6 million dishes, for Thanksgiving. And there would be like a lot of family over and like a big, kind of a celebration. Granted, there was family drama that always happened with it too. Believe me, my family is part Italian, so there was a lot of that, and and some other things as well. But there was always a message with Thanksgiving, turkeys being a turkey meal being connected to Thanksgiving. And so my cultural or my kind of, when I see a turkey, without even thinking about it, what it means to me is kind of blessings. It means a giving. It means abundance. And, somebody who maybe didn't grow up with those kinds of associations with turkeys or Thanksgiving or whatever might have a very different interpretation of what a turkey represents. But that's what a turkey represents for me. And when the turkeys, I saw them on our property, and the one in particular looked at me, and I've been feeling so kind of just, I feel like I've been like a bottle in like an ocean storm, kind of getting pulled one way and then another way and then another way. That's kind of how it's felt this morning emotionally, like just kind of not catching a break and being kind of like thrown around, emotionally with what all is going on, and feeling very uncertain about that. But the moment I saw the turkeys, it was like a total visceral reaction that I had of like a message of thanksgiving, a message of appreciation. It was like I snapped to awareness. I snapped to what is reality. I snapped out of the BS of feeling, scared and uncertain and not good about, what my day has been like. And I snapped to the kind of like the beauty and the appreciation of these turkeys, because A, I love having wildlife, and B, they represent a message of abundance and well-being and feeling good and being okay. And having that turkey turn and literally just kind of look at me through my window kind of emphasized it even more. And it was like a feeling really strongly about that. And it just shifted my entire perspective. It's like I went from feeling really not good to being like, almost like waking up out of a dream and realizing the dream I had been in had been a bit of a nightmare, and it was just a dream. It wasn't actually what was real. That was kind of what happened. Very, very powerful experience. And not the first time I've had experiences like this. But the thing is, the moment that happened, I was just kind of like, wow. I mean, one of the most amazing things, I don't know if I want to actually go there. In the period of 2000, I think it was around 2019, was kind of like a realization of how I could be standing in one place and feeling like literally one place physically, like in front of a house or on a street or whatever, and feel one way. And then without any circumstances changing, I could completely feel a different way. And that's kind of what happened with the turkey. It was like my entire lens through which I view the world and my energy of what I know as my truth about myself and my truth about what is really going on shifted. And, in seeing the turkey, was it like, oh, I didn't have the stressful situations that I had this morning with like my family members and whatever, the challenges, have they all gone away? Have they disappeared? No, they haven't. Those are still the same. They are still there. But my perspective and my energy in relation to them completely changed. And this is a really, really important thing because I feel like nature can do this for us. Nature in the natural world can communicate this kind of stuff to us that can help us gain, like, I don't even want to say gain a new awarenesses, because so many times it's not really a new awareness. It's like what we already are underneath the misconceptions that maybe we've taken on that we thought were our truth but aren't. Like the reality is I am okay. The reality is I have been through enough challenging experiences that I know that, all the things that have happened to me today all can change in an instant, and no matter what, I'm still okay. But sometimes we can get so caught up in feeling what we're feeling in the moment that it's like we don't see that. It's like we're caught up in like illusions and lies about what we are and what our reality is. Well, nature, in the natural world, it doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. And I find that the more time I spend in nature and the more that I'm around nature and I open up to nature, it teaches me the truths that are actually already available to me, but that sometimes I can't see, and nature helps me understand that. And one of the things that, I suddenly felt this impulse to create a podcast episode about this because, I've been on a long journey of learning how nature can communicate with me in this way and shift my awareness, shift how I'm feeling, shift my experience in these very, very powerful ways. Having new perspectives, new insights, new awareness. I'm not reading them in a book. I'm not picking them up from somebody else. They're coming from my own direct experiences of myself interacting with the natural world. And this is not something that just a select few can do. Anyone who tells you that is, there's another agenda or motivation kind of going on. What I know is that this is something that we all, and each of us, can do. Because really what nature is doing is nature is in sync with the truth of its own nature. And we can kind of get caught up in stuff that is where we kind of, it's almost like I'm getting a visual of like a car with a really dirty windshield. Sometimes my inner self communicates to me, well, a lot of times visually, but in many other ways too. But visual was one of the first ways that I started to really understand the communication, because it can be really powerful and communicate a lot of information quickly. But imagine you're in a car and the car, has windows, and they're all nice and clean and you can kind of see out and whatever. You're in the car and whatever. Well, imagine if the car is covered on the windshields like with dirt everywhere. And you can't see out. You can't see what's outside that's a part of the larger picture of what's going on. You're kind of caught up in just seeing what's inside the car. And but yet when a when, let's say, the windshield gets clean, let's say you spray some water using your windshield wiper fluid on the windshield, and then you use the windshield wipers and it kind of creates an opening. You could see maybe what's outside. That is something that can happen to us. Sometimes we can get so caught up in a perspective and kind of like a state of being or a state of our perception with our energy that we are not seeing the larger picture. And nature can help us tune into and communicate with us how to actually see the larger picture of what's going on and what is already actually true that maybe we are not seeing in the moment, and what's truly available to us. It's kind of like almost like shattering the illusions that aren't serving us, that maybe we're somehow in the grips of or being influenced by. And this is what happened with me with the turkey. And how did I do it? Because as I was saying, this is something that I know that everyone can actually do. The thing that it starts with is it starts with a desire. It starts with a desire and a perspective of openness. Like I used to, there was a period where I would just go out. So like mountain biking is a good example. I remember when I was mountain biking in my 20s in California, and I wasn't in the state of perspective or desire or intention at all in those moments of nature communicating with me. As a matter of fact, it was more like the opposite. Like nature was just kind of like this backdrop, and I would go out on a mountain bike to just, I don't know, experience something else, like conquer something, in a way. I was not open to nature. I didn't have a desire to listen to nature in those moments. As a matter of fact, that's part of why I stopped mountain biking, because I realized like I wasn't getting as much out of it as what I thought I originally was. And I liked hiking in nature. I liked more quiet moments in nature more than barreling down a road. And this is no offense against mountain bikers. Everybody's different. This was just my truth. But for me, it's like when I went out into nature, mountain biking in those days, I didn't have an openness. I wasn't open to what nature could show me. Nature was almost like this actor in my desire to be, really aggressive in my physicality and in me kind of like conquering my mountain bike, So I didn't have that kind of awareness. But there are many other times when I have, like with nature. And this is something that I've learned is that, it's like realizing that there is a whole world in nature, but you're not going to tune into the whole world and the whole wisdom and the energy of it unless you acknowledge that there is a whole world and wisdom and energy to be open to. And so the first step in having any kind of experiences I've found like this, where nature communicates with me in this way, comes from having, a desire, having an intention that I want to be open. And in that desire and in that intention, it kind of just opens a door, and it starts to kind of get the ball rolling, if you will, in terms of like what I have found is that nature is always willing to be like a messenger for us of how we can align more with what we are. And if we open the door with our intention and our desire, nature always is willing to start the ball rolling, if you will, in, kind of giving us that experience when we're open to it. We can't demand it. We can't say we need to have this or we need to have this a certain way. It's like we open up to it. And in the opening up to it, the communication can start to happen. And it can start in, often kind of more simple ways initially, and then things can kind of get more complicated. Like in the very beginning, when I first started to experience this, it wasn't like sometimes I can get really complex messages like, hey, go out into nature, and I'm just doing something, and suddenly I have this like massive awareness come in relationship to nature, like kind of a complicated thing. That isn't where I started. I first started more with like the simple things. And like anything we do, the more we do something, the more we kind of get familiar with it, get comfortable with it, understand how it works. And so too is the case with communicating with nature. We also, I find what I've learned in this is also that like, it's almost like we're building up a language of communication with the natural world. And we start understanding, how does this communication work? What does it mean? How, like, what can it be like? It's kind of like learning a foreign language. If you don't know a foreign language at all, you don't just jump right into suddenly speaking a fluent foreign language. You pick up a couple words here and you start to understand and make a connection, and then you move on to some other words and then some sentences, and then, people who are really fluent in a language could like write a book in that other language, or completely, move to that culture and completely exist with no variation, right? It's the same thing with communicating with nature. But the thing that it starts with is openness, and openness and a desire. And then there's some, other steps that I have found that have been helpful along my journey of doing that. But I feel like I've talked enough. I guess the thing, I'm kind of wondering almost myself, like, why did I suddenly feel called to create this episode? And I guess it's two reasons for the purpose of this episode. So far in this show, I've shared story after story of just amazing things that I have learned from animals and nature and the natural world. Things and insight and awareness and benefits, really. I mean, I can't imagine not having had the benefits that I've had from the natural world. I mean, the natural world inspires everything about me, inspires me with beauty, inspires the artwork I create. Everything that I create in my paintings is inspired by nature. And sometimes I'm not even aware of it, but it's for sure true. As a matter of fact, yesterday I was driving to pick up one of my sons from somewhere, and I looked up and I saw the clouds, and I was like, oh my gosh, that cloud formation is exactly what I painted like 3 days ago in an abstract painting, where I wasn't trying to paint a cloud. I wasn't. I was just letting myself flow. But I realized that there's a way in which my observation of nature, as I just kind of go out and I look at the clouds, and I do day in and day out, influenced, what I then created in this painting. But I wasn't trying to make clouds. My point is just that the natural world really has an influence on me, and an influence that is extremely, extremely beneficial. Extremely beneficial. And I'm guessing if you're listening to this episode, that you feel some kind of connection with nature. Because if you don't feel a connection with nature in that way, you're probably, not ready yet. And there are certainly times in my life where I had been really connected to nature, and then times where I was like not open to it, and I didn't think about nature in the way that I'm talking about at all, and it's really about where you're at. But I'm guessing if you're listening to this episode, there must be some way in which you're feeling some kind of connection with nature, or wanting to understand nature more, or wanting to feel a deeper connection, or maybe even have your own experiences of communication at some level, like what I'm talking about. Or maybe you already have them and you're trying to understand them, and hearing me talk about it makes you realize, you're not a crazy person, or other people are experiencing this too. And let me tell you, yes, that is true. There are other people that experience this as well. Or maybe you're just trying to understand how to do this consciously and intentionally more, how to invite it more. But in either case, I feel like for whatever reason, all of this is why I decided to talk about what I'm talking about today. Because so far in this show, I've been talking more about what different things have meant to me, what my chickens have communicated to me, what the skies have shown me, what, spring can remind me of. And I find that my inner self is so in sync with the natural world, because it is at the same source, the same thing. And nature is such a powerful way for us to tune into what I would call a feeling of in-syncness within ourselves. In-syncness with a feeling of just a greater sense of power, not power to control the world or power over anyone, a greater sense of our own power and well-being in knowing that we're okay no matter what. And being able to actively learn how to allow ourselves to communicate with nature and receive and be open to what nature can do for us, I would not change for the entire world. I absolutely would not. There are just so many benefits. It's beyond what I could even describe. I would just be talking for the rest of my life with no break, honestly. So anyway, there's that. Turkeys on my property led to this. What a blessing, what a blessing. I don't know if they're still out there or not, but that's a blessing. I also am just going to add 2-3 mornings ago, we had a fox in our back pasture area as well. 2 foxes actually. And I know at some point I'm going to talk about that, because I know it also really was a communication as well. So I will, when the time is right and when I feel called, sorry, my keyboard just fell. When I feel called, I will talk about that as well. But such is the life of when we open ourselves up to how nature can communicate with us, and that's what this show is all about. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, and I'm going to end on that note. Until the next time. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Power of Nature podcast. To learn more about me and my other offerings, you can visit my website at michellewaldo.com. That's MICHELLEWALDO.com.